She requested.
He's making us even. I'd like to call the meeting to order. State law requires this body to announce at this time that a copy of the current Open Meetings Act is available at the back of the room where it is accessible to the public. Roll call.
Jansen.
Here.
Bailey.
Here.
Kness.
Here.
Engler.
Here.
We will move on to item number 4, consideration of a resolution recommending approval of a redevelopment plan of the City of Holdridge, Nebraska, approval of a redevelopment project of the City of Holdridge, Nebraska, and approval of related actions for the redevelopment plan, workforce housing, March 2019. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Mesner and Mr. Bacon.
Thank you. After our last meeting, of course, the process has to go to the Planning and Zoning Committee. We took it to Planning and Zoning last week. Doug was there, and we had a very good meeting. I thought it went extremely well. We worked through a number of issues. We did a good job, I think, of comparing costs versus what we were getting, and talked about some changes. As a result of that, we have made a couple of changes in the project. We have a limited budget, so when something gets added at one place, it gets cut someplace else. But what we did was we cut off part of 10th Street, so we aren't doing a stub street there, and we cut off the 2 lots there, so we actually have 9 lots that will be in phase 2 instead of the 7 lots that were originally there. And we took the money that we were saving by doing that on 10th for the street, the water, and the sewer, and used that to pave 11th Street over to Valley Street. And that was in response to concerns about having 2 entrances in, and a concern that 11th Street might be the more logical entrance for most people into the subdivision. So we kind of worked through that. Doug can speak to it. I think he's pushed everything past Kim Parsons. I think everything is done according to code at this point. Those were the changes that were made. The Planning and Zoning recommended that the project advance, and so now it's back to you, and we need your recommendation to set it on up to City Council.
Doug, do you want to just kind of fill in the CRA on what?
Sure. Probably the big question was the street widths, etc. When we originally set this up, we were looking at 36-foot wide streets. And depending on how the subdivision was laid out, that would be code, would be 36. Our end layout here, and talking with Kim, we labeled this as a marginal access type subdivision, which allows us to narrow our street down to 31. So by narrowing our streets down to 31-foot wide, we are able to save that money over the entire length of everything we're doing. And also by moving our phase 1 over to exclude 2 lots, we're able to take that and get enough money so we can pave 11. This gives us 2 paved accesses into the subdivision. The other thing I did, because there was some concern at the preliminary meeting, Planning Commission, was I went around town and checked some street widths. I went south on East, and we're 31-foot wide going south. 10th Street going west, right there up that intersection, is 31. Now up on 11th, it's actually 43, but that's only for 1 block. Once it gets to Lincoln, it drops back down to 31, going further west. That's probably the only hiccup. Everywhere else, I've checked northwest corner of town, south, just multiple places throughout town, and we have a couple 26-foot streets out there. But everything else is in the neighborhood of 30, 31 in there. Some of the newer stuff that we're doing, the high-end housing that Lee Isaacson did over there on the north side of town, Prairie View that we just did here probably 5-6 years ago, those have 36 foot wide paving, but those are different styles of subdivisions. The houses, you know, they're $300,000 to $400,000 houses, kind of different area. So, but getting back to this area, probably 90% of those streets are 31. So I was able to, I felt good about that, you know, because that's one of those things everybody's really concerned about. Well, this is kind of what we live in right now. So, really, that was probably the biggest concern the Planning Commission had was our street size. We spent a lot of time talking about that, and they felt comfortable that, you know, if we can narrow that thing down to 31, we can make this thing work. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the CRA members?
If I may, the proposal is for you to adopt a resolution making a recommendation to the city council, and that resolution is in front of you. This change here will be substituted for the one in the plan showing the layout. You're also to do the plan is not otherwise changed, you're also to do a cost-benefit analysis of this project to see what the impact is on the community for the use of tax increment financing, which follows the statutes. That is in there. Current value of the, in the redevelopment plan, current value of that property assessed is $26,400 for about $3,400 in taxes. Once this project is up, you'll have significant valuation of, we think, assessed valuation of somewhere of $3.4 million. This plan will pay for public infrastructure that has to go in, so there won't be an additional burden on the community. You're to analyze the impacts for employers inside that area and generally in the community. This should not result in any burden on the employers. It will provide perhaps some relief so some of the people that are commuting can purchase homes in the community. This doesn't add any strange structures, so your police and fire protection should be adequate. You're also to analyze what happens to the school system with this development. You will have additional occupancy in the school. Your current occupancy in the school system is current household occupancy in the county is 2.2 people per household. If you have a traditional family, that means 0.2 children for every residential unit. So you're not going to be overwhelming the school. Non-traditional families, you could have 4 kids and 1 mom or 4 kids and 1 dad sort of thing. So, but it should not overwhelm them. And then any other items that you can think of. Essentially, this should result in increased revenue for your city tax coffers, as all of the material that is put in place in this project is subject to sales tax at the local area. So this is a step in the process where you are asked to make a recommendation to the city council. I have proposed a resolution that would recommend that you approve the project, and that would be passed on to the city council. If you recommend against it, the project is done, because obviously you won't go the next step should there be city council approval. So if you say no, we're done, we'll take our ball and go home. If you think this is a project that is worthy of the community, then we would ask that you pass the resolution. Glad to answer any questions.
I'm on the cost benefit analysis, the $3.4 million estimated value after completion.
Right. Doesn't
What
square
does that
with
consist
the amount of
of?
investment, yeah.
No, I understand that, but which lots, I guess, does that consist of?
Okay. The easiest way to say it is, these here, and this one, they will be duplex.
These two, not this one.
Oh, excuse me, these two, these three, along here, and along here, if you could follow that.
So not the three on East Street.
Uh-uh.
No, the three on East, I think, well, they weren't included in your evaluation.
They weren't included in the evaluation, and, real frankly, those are gonna be a hard sale, especially on a gravel street, and their view is not that good, so, we're just looking at doing that. Now, the impact on this, you should know, is we were trying to get back $319,000 in the tip bond. This layout will not do that. It's gonna come closer to 550 to 575 you get back. So you're gonna, out of those funds, you're going to put that in paving, sewer, and water and not get it back. So that's the difference here.
And a lot of that comes from the three lots that are facing East Street, because the product that we're building is our townhomes for resale. And I don't think you can build townhomes over there and have them, and get them sold facing to the west. And if there's someone who can come up and build rental properties in there, then you would add to your valuation and you would come much closer to getting your money
So
back.
you're saying that a portion of the 815 is going towards things that aren't eligible for?
No,
For what?
they're going into street, sewer, and water, and there's not gonna be any revenue coming from those. Your revenue shrunk and your costs have increased.
So he's saying what will come back is, you're saying about 515?
550 to 575 over the proposed build-out period.
So the revenue isn't 67,000 a year anymore?
Probably not.
That's assuming those three lots aren't developed.
Yeah.
True, right.
Is East Street to be paved?
East Street is not part of this. When the discussion came up before, the discussion was that East Street would be gap paved, which makes more sense, I think, because it's 2 blocks long, and you can gap pave the 2 blocks, and if you do it as part of this, you only get 1 block, and you still have a block out there that's not paved. It also makes everybody pay their own share. Otherwise, you're taking money out of this project to pave that street, and you're not getting anything out of it because the housing across the way is not very good. So you can't sell those lots. So for that reason, if it's paved, it needs to be done as a gap pavement. And then the city has the authority to do that, and that's a city council decision whether they choose to gap it.
To create a paving district, don't you need the property owners, doesn't the majority of the property owners have to?
There's a, Mike speak up, but there's a provision that allows the city to do 2 blocks.
You can force a gap paving without their consent.
And assess the property owners?
It's limited to 2 blocks, and there has to be concrete on both ends, as I recall, but this would qualify.
This has been done in Holdridge already in the past. I believe on Water Avenue, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Rod. In front of,
Well, I don't remember that one, but they're right, you can gap pave. East Street, there's paving at 10th, and there's paving, and it measures out under there's also a foot limitation, and it's under the amount of feet that you can gap pave. The only problem is that if the property owners on both sides don't pay, then you gotta foreclose on the properties, and it ends up on the taxpayers. And if there's no personal liability to them, but they can lose their property. So I guess if you gap pave this and these don't sell, theoretically the city could end up with those 3 lots on the west instead of their money for the paving. And then I had just a couple questions.
Mhm.
Is this map of the whole 10 acres?
Yes.
And the green is the paving, you're not planning on paving
No,
10th on down?
no. That's possible for a second phase if there is enough demand to fill out this one. You could-
But if you've already tiffed it, then there won't
No,
be
you
a
could
tiff
ti-
for
You
that.
could tiff the remaining lots.
Huh?
You could tiff the remaining lots that are not developed and there's no houses on.
Well, but I thought I thought you were gonna tiff this whole area.
No, we're just going to tiff the houses adjoining the green. Except for the 3 lots along, is that East
Okay,
Street?
the 3 lots on the very west you're
Don't
not-
get tiffed.
they're not gonna be included.
Right.
Okay, so you're that.
And then the strip along here, these houses here.
This lot is not included.
So this here won't be tiffed. I mean, it won't be
Under
part of the
this
TIF
project.
contract.
Not on this project, no.
Okay, and you mentioned something about the other day when Bob and I met you, that the TIF contract would read that anything in the TIF area there can't be any assessments. Like if the city wanted to assess 11th, this TIF contract would read you can't TIF this across the top.
This is where
You
you're
can't
putting in the
assess that.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is if you do that, that's a tax credit project that has very limited income. And if you add tax burden on top of that, you make it so that it financially fails. And the investors are going to want the protection, if they're buying those tax credit certificates, that you can't come in and ruin the project by coming in with an additional tax burden on them. So that what
Well,
you
actually,
do-
the buyers of the TIF were, this TIF bond is simply from the grants, the 3 grants from PCDC and from DED and the other one.
That is true, but the portion of the project that's called the tax credit project
Right.
has, $3.5 million worth of tax credits that are coming from the outside in order to build those
Yeah,
low income.
I'm just trying to figure out, so that
But
the 11th from
That,
the
that's gonna
green,
be up here.
yeah,
Tax credit's gonna be up here.
yeah.
Okay.
The 11th from the green to the edge of the city limits, if the city wanted to pave that, they could not assess that against these tax credit units.
Right,
And then,
by written agreement, yes.
yeah.
Any other questions, concerns?
The process, should your vote be positive, this now goes to a hearing in front of the city council. If they approve it, it would come back to you for the proposed redevelopment contract and the issuance of the TIF bond at the next meeting. Thank you very much for your consideration.
The property north of 11th that is unpaved, that's all Sunrise Manor property?
I believe so.
It's one of the tax credit projects. I don't remember if it's Sunrise East or Sunrise Lane, but it's one of the tax credit projects.
Kind of looks like both of them almost.
You good? Anything else? Before we take a vote, is there anybody that wants to say anything besides us here at the table?
I make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll say. Go ahead.
So you're fine.
Motion by Jared, second by Dan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Has to be a roll call vote,
Roll
sorry.
call vote, please. Dane?
Steve,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
and Jared.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there any other business?
I have a question. When will this go before the council?
6 o'clock.
We can get out of here, shouldn't we?
20 minutes. That's kind of why we did it before a council meeting. Any other business? Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.